You began your van life journey and built your own power system. Besides having the essential battery storage, it is also possible to configure an inverter to obtain AC power supply. But how much power does the inverter need? What is the efficiency of the inverter? What are the situations where an inverter is unable to power a device? We will introduce the principle of an inverter and understand it through practical observation. Working principle of inverter. An inverter is a device that converts a direct current to an alternating current. The main components include a boost converter for boosting. H-bridge converts current to AC. MCU is the brain of inverter, processes various instructions. LC filter is used to eliminate unwanted signals. These internal circuits generate heat when they operate. This heat needs to be dissipated timely so as not to reduce the efficiency. In the process of converting AC power, there are two types of output waveforms. Pure sine wave, modified sine wave. A pure sine wave is the most common signal in terms of frequency. The power supply from the main socket is a sine wave. It can be used for all types of AC appliances with low energy loss, but the technical requirements and costs are high. Corrected sine wave is a square wave AC of poor quality. The circuit is corrected to give a sine wave-like waveform. Most AC appliances can run on this type of power. However, some sensitive equipment will react adversely to this type of waveform. For example, microwave ovens, monitors, medical equipment, etc. This can lead to noise interference or inoperability. Exact wattage of inverter. There are many brands of inverters on the market with different specifications. However, since the specifications are not clearly marked, many manufacturers, to compete for sales, use different specifications to label the wattage of the items. We will observe the actual power and loss of the inverter. Test A, labeled wattage versus exact wattage. Powered by 24-volt 100 amp-hour lithium iron phosphate battery. Using a 3500-watt inverter. Connected to 1500-watt ceramic stove and 1200-watt induction cooktop. After turning on the maximum power of the ceramic stove, adjust the power of the induction cooktop. The output AC current is increased to 19.7 amp. The inverter is damaged due to overvoltage and cannot be powered on. Dismantled the inverter and found that all 4 fuses were blown. After repairing the inverter, re-observe the real power of the inverter. After switching on the maximum power of the ceramic stove, meter measures the inverter output with a current of about 12 amp. Turn on the induction cooktop to increase the load power. The AC current is now about 14.3 amp and the voltage is about 110 volt. This means that the actual continuous power consumption is about 1573 watt. After less than a minute, the inverter stopped working due to overload. Turn the inverter back on. If the 12 amp AC supply is maintained. At this time, the battery input wattage of the inverter is about 1320 watt. It can continue to operate, and the inverter does not sound an alarm. However, there is a discrepancy with the output power of the inverter. Observe inverter losses. The components in the inverter have a rated operating temperature, and some of them will heat up during operation. For example, MOSFET, inductor, and transformer. This heat energy is also the loss from the conversion of electrical energy by the inverter. If the heat dissipation performance of the inverter is poor, with continuous usage, the temperature will increase higher and higher. This will reduce the efficiency and life of the inverter, and even stop working immediately. Test B, conversion loss. Maintains 12 amp AC power supply. The wattage of the battery input to the inverter is approximate 1320 watt. Using a current meter to measure the inverter input. The DC current is about 60.4 amp and the voltage is about 24.5 volt. The actual input wattage of the inverter is about 1480 watt. Compared to the actual continuous power consumption of 1320 watt at the same time. The difference in wattage is the conversion loss of the inverter. In fact, the conversion efficiency indicated by the inverter is the best efficiency measured by the manufacturer in a good heat dissipation environment. Different power loads will affect the conversion efficiency. The inverter's efficiency is usually highest between 15% and 60% of the rated output power. Therefore, the inverter power will reduce the conversion efficiency when fully loaded. And below 15% output will make the conversion efficiency drop rapidly. For example, the efficiency may be as low as 5% when connected to a cell phone for charging. In addition to the conversion loss, another loss is the basic standby loss. Even if no load is connected, as long as the inverter is turned on, standby losses are generated to maintain operation. Test C, zero load loss. After turning on the inverter, you can see that the current is raised to 0.5 amp on the ammeter. The battery voltage is 25.8 volt. The input wattage of the inverter is about 12.9 watt. This means that when the inverter is turned on, it will continue to consume battery power even if it is not connected to a load. This standby loss will increase as the wattage of the inverter increases. For example, a 1200 watt inverter will generate 10 watt of consumption, while a 3000 watt inverter generates 15 watt. Therefore, the inverter must be turned off when not in use to avoid continuous consumption of battery power. Observation of continuous operation of inverter. Eventually, high-power devices are used continuously through inverters. Observe how the battery power is being consumed. Test D, inverter operation versus battery level. When the LFP battery voltage is 26.3 volt, about 80% power, boiling 800 cubic centimeters of water through a ceramic stove. The DC current output on the current meter is about 59 amp. The battery voltage is 25.5 volt. At this time, the power output to the inverter is about 1504 watt. After 15 minutes, the water is boiled, and then replaced with 800 cubic centimeters of water. Now, the battery voltage is 24.5 volt and the output current is about 60 amp. The power output to the inverter is about 1470 watt. After another 5 minutes, the output current is now about 62 amp and the voltage drops to 22 volt. The power output to the inverter is about 1430 watt. Within a minute, the voltage continued to drop to 21 volt. The inverter stopped automatically after sounding the low voltage alarm. However, after the inverter stopped operating, the battery voltage rose back to 22 volt, indicating that there was still about 20% power left. This is the phenomenon of battery polarization. The instantaneous voltage and the actual voltage during the discharge process produce a certain deviation. After discharge, the polarization disappears and the voltage rises again. Depending on the ratio of inverter power/battery capacity, this percentage may vary. Take this observation as an example. The inverter does not fully use the battery power. The last 20% of the battery power is not available to the inverter. Conclusions and recommendations. Energy storage devices in vehicles are expensive and have limited power, so they must be used efficiently. When buying an inverter, be sure to know the wattage of the appliance you need, and choose the inverter with sufficient wattage. Second, consider placing it in a well-ventilated space to dissipate heat and take safety precautions. The power supply through the inverter will generate additional losses, coupled with high-power AC equipment, resulting in faster than expected battery power loss. Battery storage capacity should be increased relatively. Additionally, in response to the trend of van life, various DC equipment has been developed in the market. For example, DC refrigerator, DC kettle, DC air conditioner and DC heating furnace. The benefits of using DC equipment is: direct connection to the battery avoids unnecessary conversion consumption. And with the low power of DC equipment, you can use multiple appliances at the same time. No power limitations from the inverter and no worries about power overload. Therefore, it is recommended that when van life, do not directly use the AC appliances at home in the car. Try choosing a DC device with a small size. Not only makes battery use more efficient, it is also easier to store equipment and has relatively more interior space. If there are AC appliances that must be used, and there is no DC option, e.g. medical equipment, select the appropriate wattage inverter for individual use, and use DC power for the rest of the equipment. Adopting this flexible power consumption method can improve the efficiency of battery consumption. I hope this advice will help you in the use of inverters.